Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Grabowski here with a Marshfield Community News special. Joining me today is the Register of Probate for Plymouth County, Mr. Matthew McDonough. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Jonathan, thanks for reaching out, and it's a pleasure to be on your show today.
Great. So we've been talking for a few months now about you coming on MCTV and talking about what your office does, what the probate court does, and so I think it's a great time to kind of talk about that. For those that are watching outside of Marshfield, this may run in other communities. Just talk about yourself, your background, and experiences prior to becoming Register of Probate.
Sure. I ran for Register of Probate. First of all, it's an elected position. A lot of people don't know that. We don't have many elected positions within the trial courts. The clerks of court, who manage the Superior Court clerk's office, and the registers are the only elected representatives in this form of government for the residents in Massachusetts. My interest in this position came from the fact that I went to law school at Boston College Law School. I was an assistant district attorney for 10 years in the Norfolk DA's office, and I had also been in private practice for several years before the position became vacant in 2014. And Jonathan, as you know, and many of our friends in Marshfield know, I've been involved in civic government issues and volunteering on different boards in Marshfield for many years. So I've been very dedicated to public service. It's something that I believe very strongly in. And I wanted to use my law degree after leaving the DA's office and serving in the town of Marshfield in a way that would let me to help people. Once I got to look at what the registrar's job did and how much we impact people's lives, especially family lives in Plymouth County on a daily basis, I saw it as a very unique fit for me and my family and a way for me to give back to the community.
Great. So you were elected to the position, back in 2014. What made you, you kind of answered this right, but what made you decide to run for it? You're very accomplished, when you were a selectman on the school committee and other things you've done.
One of my mentors in civic life is Bob McCarthy. He was our former Register of Probate who served from 2000 to 2015. And Bob had let me know that he was going to retire after the 2014 election cycle. I met with him and I met with some other probate attorneys and other people who use the courts. And I found it to be, as I said before, a position that's a unique combination of using a law degree, using management skills, understanding how human resource issues work and managing employees in a government environment, and also being able to be a voice for the people that you represent. As I've said, we're an elected register, elected clerk. It means we do follow standing orders, rules, and ethics that are set forth for us by the Supreme Judicial Court and by the judges who run the different divisions of the court. But we are also the voice of the people when we function as your clerk or as your register. I always look at things very similar to the way the managers who are non-elected look at them, but I do have a particular lens because I know I represent the people of Plymouth County. And I also know the county a lot better than some other people might know it who are appointed. And as I tell people, I don't have any off hours. And people know that. They reach out to me through Facebook, social media, email, and I put my cell phone out to everybody as well. So it's a rewarding job, and it gives me the chance to help people on a frequent basis.
Great. So a little Civics 101 here. What's the role of the Register of Probate?
So it's a constitutional office for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's an elected position. And essentially, to boil it down to one phrase, you are the keeper of the record for the probate and family court. I'm responsible for making sure that all of the files and all of the decisions of the court, all the filings of the different parties are preserved so that they can be there for viewing by the public. We are the public's court. So if somebody wants to look at a file, we have to make sure that we're able to make it available to them for inspection unless it's impounded or marked as private for a certain reason by the judges. We are in a really interesting era to have this job because we're finally in a position where we're truly making advancements, both pre-COVID and by necessity during the COVID epidemic, towards a more electronic friendly court. So that's one of the things I've been very excited about being a register. I also view the job, because I am elected, is that I have to look beyond the envelope of the position of just maintaining the files for the court and making sure our judges have the files when they need them and that filings are handled appropriately. Docket matters are put into mass courts in the right way, scanning is done. I'm always looking to service, and how do we service the people of Plymouth County to make sure that they have the best access to justice that we can possibly provide. So that's what fuels me on a daily basis. How can I respond to concerns from our litigants, from our attorneys, internally from our judges and our clerks who work in the lobby, from our colleagues in the probation department, to make sure that we're giving access to the files, we're preserving the cases for the record for the future, and we're making sure that we're looking to the future as to how we can provide additional legal services and other assistance to people who are pro se litigants, especially people who represent themselves.
Okay. So talk about the role of the probate and family courts in Plymouth County.
Sure. As most people know, Plymouth County is 26 towns in the city of Brockton, roughly about 500,000 people. On an annual basis, we usually have about 10,000 cases filed in the probate and family court. This year, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm not sure what the final numbers are going to be. We've had ebbs and flows based upon our interaction with the public with the COVID crisis. Some of the different types of cases that we handle, our biggest number of cases are our divorce cases. And that is a large umbrella that covers many different other types of case filings, including modifications and contempts based upon parties deciding that they want to change a divorce judgment later on, or they believe that the other party has not been keeping up their side of the agreement on a divorce judgment, making sure that the court enforces it. We also have situations under divorces where people are looking towards parenting time, making sure that alimony is handled appropriately and that it's fair, and that the children's needs are met above all else. One great former judge told me that one of the things they always look forward to in any probate and family court case is seeing to the needs of the child. So that is something that the probate and family court cares very deeply about. Other case types include probate matters. When somebody passes away and they have assets that need to be distributed and dispersed. There's several different types of probate cases that we handle, from voluntary cases to informal and formal cases. And each of our different tier of probate filings involve different filing fees. And the goal is to make the easy, simple cases that have less money involved and less real estate involved with a lower filing fee and less intrusion upon a citizen's time, to make sure that we can get through it as expeditiously as possible. And then we get elevated as we get up into the more complex probate filings that require more judicial attention, especially if there's multiple parties and people don't necessarily agree about how to disperse the assets of a decedent. We also handle adoptions, which is probably the most fun time in the probate and family court. There is fun in the court, and it's a wonderful time, especially in November of each year. We have our adoption day in Brockton. This year it was virtual, of course, but normally we have several dozen families gathered together in the Brockton Trial Court building and get to celebrate all kinds of new forever families being created. In addition to our adoptions, we do change of names as well. And for many reasons, people will change their name throughout their life. And I'm trying to think what else we deal with. Guardianships are a very, very important case type, and they have been as emergency cases this year during COVID, taking care of minors who have parents who are unable to take care of them anymore. And we hold those family members and others in such high regard who step forward to take care of these children, and also incapacitated adults who need guardianship as well and people to take care of them. And we have conservated cases where you'll have somebody appointed to take care of somebody's finances. So essentially the guardianship case, somebody's in charge of a person's whole well-being, and conservated cases, somebody's in charge of making sure that their finances are handled appropriately and their money is spent to cover their bills and their expenses.
Okay. When I was, prepping for our conversation today, I went on the website, and one of the things it says on the county website, it talks about how each probate court has three interactive components that are, quote, designed to effectively, efficiently, and fairly manage each case throughout the complex maze that is the law. Talk about those three components.
What a great description of what we do. So I'm assuming that part of the website is talking about the division in the probate and family court of our judicial lobby, our registry, and our probation department. As described with the registry, we're kind of the first point of contact when you come into the probate and family court. Every filing starts either at our front counter or processed electronically, or we assist you by phone as well. As you go forward and you get your dates and you go into having hearings, where information is exchanged, discovery occurs, that is all handled by the judicial lobby. And that's where you'll encounter our sessions clerks who are the people who greet you in the courtroom the day that you come into a courtroom or a virtual courtroom, as we'll talk about later, and our judges as well. We have 5 judges who serve in the Plymouth County Probate and Family Court. And if they need assistance outside of the judicial lobby or outside of the registry to help try to resolve a case ahead of time, one of the resources that the judges have at their disposal is our probation department, where we have trained probation officers who can meet with parties, especially on divorce cases, to try to mediate a case and come to a resolution so that the cases don't have to go to a trial before the court.
Right. So how many physical courts do you oversee?
We have 2 courts in Plymouth County. Some counties have more, some have less. Bristol County, for example, has 3 locations. Suffolk, I believe, has 1. Norfolk County has 1. Barnstable County has 1. But with having 2 different courts, it's a very interesting thing because our county seat is here in Plymouth. I'm in the Plymouth Courthouse right now, and our Brockton Courthouse, which is kind of considered to be our satellite courthouse, is actually where most of our judges sit. So we've always had traditionally 3 or 4 judges sitting in Brockton, with most of the lobby staff and most of the probation staff, and a very small group of employees from the registry, and with a working front counter. So it is an actual full working registry, but with a smaller amount of staff, and most of our files are not kept there.
Right.
In Plymouth, it's the other way around. In Plymouth, we have about 20 employees when we're fully staffed, and most of our case files are stored down here at Overy Street in Plymouth, and we typically only have 1 judge in the courtroom upstairs here in Plymouth.
Okay. Do the services change depending on which location you're at?
No, you're going to get the same services no matter where you go. Where you go largely depends upon what judge you've been assigned to. Unlike most other divisions of the trial courts, once you're assigned to a judge in the probate and family court, they keep your case throughout the duration of your case, for the most part, unless there's some reason to transfer a case from one county to another, or there's some sort of a conflict that becomes known to the court. So once you have your judge, that judge may come down to Plymouth for a week, and you may follow that judge as they come down to Plymouth, or they may stay in Brockton. We do try to take care of people who have any sort of needs that have to be in one court or the other. If it's a transportation issue or some other health-related issue, we're always trying to help people in that regard. So
what are some of the most common items that you deal with?
On a daily basis, our most common item, well, I would always respond to that by saying pre-COVID or post-COVID.
We'll say your first term, pre-COVID. We'll talk COVID in a little bit.
So the first 5 years in office, your average day is a very busy day with our front counter. And that's the highest point of contact before the COVID epidemic. People would come in with all kinds of questions and concerns. And my goal, my first couple of years, was to make sure that front counter experience was as quick, as efficient as possible, that people are treated with respect. And that all centers with our staff. So my first focus in the first few years was making sure that our staff was cross-trained in all aspects of the office, all case types. I described them earlier. They're very diverse. We probably have some of the most diverse case types of any division of the trial courts. And when I came into office, we had 2 different teams in the office. And that functioned well for many years for prior registers. I realized that we needed to do things a little bit differently as we were having fewer and fewer staff after going through several economic downturns in the Commonwealth over the past 15 to 20 years. So we broke down the domestic and probate different groups or departments and made sure that all employees went onto teams and they were cross-trained, assigning them numbers for their cases, so that there would be personal responsibility and accountability for the actual case number on each case file. We found that worked really well for several years, and we only recently had to make a change away from that program because of COVID, but it is a manner in which serving the public at the front counter that I hope that we can return to once we get back to a new normal, once we have a vaccine and beat this thing.
Right. So looking back at that first term, what were some of the highlights?
Highlights for me, as I said, the cross-training was a really rewarding process that allowed me to understand what the staff was doing on a daily basis and learn with them as they learn new case types. Seeing people who had worked for 20 years on one area, got to learn something new and found it to be rewarding, was really nice for me as a manager to see with our employees. With regards to how we helped people at the counter, one of the things that I love about Plymouth County, and I look forward to restoring it, is our Lawyer of the Day program. Yeah. We had a Lawyer of the Day program before March of this year that was second to none across the entire Commonwealth. Dozens and dozens of lawyers, I think we had well over 100 at one point, donate their time. In Plymouth, it was almost 5 days a week, starting at 9 a.m., going till whenever the list ran out. People would come in at 8:30 in the morning. They'd sign up, first come, first serve, and they could get free legal advice about probate and family court matters in a confidential room set aside off of the front counter of the Plymouth office and the Brockton office. That impressed me so much, and I had the pleasure of participating in the program when I was in private practice. It impressed me so much that we found attorneys who were able to further specialize into the guardianship cases, and they were able to help us by creating a guardianship program as well, where on a set Wednesday of the month, you could come in just on your guardianship cases, which can be very much more complicated cases than our divorce matters, and get specialized advice from attorneys with many, many years of experience on those matters.
Great. That's fantastic. So you were recently reelected to the position.
Yeah.
This may be difficult to answer, but what are some things you'd like to work on during that second term? I know we're in this COVID period of trying to find a new normal, but what are some bigger things that you want to work on over the next few years?
Our move towards a digital courthouse and a digital court division in terms of 1/3 of your government is taken off at a rocket's pace in the last few months. The trial courts are doing everything they possibly can to disperse laptops to employees, to get people trained on Zoom and other ways to communicate electronically. One of my goals is to model a program of having a virtual registry. And that would mean having my employees trained with a laptop that they could work on either in the office or from home if we have to close a courthouse, which unfortunately we've done a number of closures throughout the past 8 months. But they're usually very temporary in nature while we still continue to do our work and our services. And a person would just simply go onto my website, PlymouthCountyProbate.com, and be able to click on a button that will say virtual registry. You'd be put into a queue. You get answered by one of my employees, and hopefully they have a nice virtual background for you. And they would be able to answer your questions about whatever it is that brought you to the registry that day, the virtual registry. One of the great things I like about what some of the other counties are doing with virtual registry is that it allows you to share forms, so that if somebody is handling an emergency, they're able to swap the form back and forth, have somebody fill out the PDF, send it back, and then we can immediately get it docketed and send it up with a docket number to the virtual court and have somebody heard as soon as possible. Our emergency cases are always our top priority. Those include our restraining orders, our what we call the 209A cases, where somebody has been threatened or they're in physical harm or fear of physical harm from another person, and they need a restraining order in a domestic environment, or the guardianship cases as well, especially where it's somebody who's a minor who needs the supervision of an adult in their life, and somebody who can immediately deal with the schools and deal with the child's doctors and make decisions for them that they really can't wait for. So those are things that I look forward to in the next term, to getting online. I'm hopeful that in the next few weeks we'll have our premiere of our first couple hours a week of virtual registry. And we'll be able to expand that as we get more laptops into the office and get more staff trained on them as well.
That's great. So COVID, everyone's been impacted by COVID in one way or another, professionally, personally. How has it impacted your office?
We had a shared experience with everybody else in this. Nobody could see this coming. In March of this past year, I was going about our normal St. Patrick's Day type themed activities, and all of a sudden I get a phone call and I get a text message that the courts are going to be closed for a couple of days. Like everybody else, we start to tune in, learn what COVID is, and we had a few days where there was no service and everything was closed. Once we reopened the next week, everything we did was based off of the telephone. And that's something we still do today. Even though I aspire to get us more geared towards electronic communication and Zoom, always know that you can call us. And there's very few things that we cannot accomplish by telephone in order to assist somebody. I know there still are a lot of people out there who don't have electronic means to get a hold of us. So that's really been the biggest thing, is that adjusting from the front counter experience, which was for 5 years our primary point of contact with the world, to closing that down initially and moving towards telephone operations. For the first few months, we handled very limited case types. We were primarily focused on the emergencies that I described before. As we went through the summer and we got through the first curve and flattening that curve, getting into the summer months, and our state government started to lift restrictions, the trial courts followed suit. They did that after making sure that we had plexiglass protection for our front counters, that we had PPE for our staff in the form of masks and gloves, sanitizing equipment, and new instructions about how the court should operate. Initially, when we started to get into the late summer months and we started to look towards opening our front doors again, we were also on a limited staff structure. About a third of the staff came in person, and then eventually it went to about 50%, and we got ourselves back up to 100% staffing in the early fall and had our doors reopened so that we could interact with the public again. It's a new type of interaction, however. I encourage people, call us, email us before you come into the court. If you absolutely have to come into the court, we'll be there to help you. I always like to tell people what to expect when they come to the courthouse. You can bring your cell phones because we want people to be able to communicate with us from the hallway if they can. If they need to swap a PDF with us or electronic information, you're now allowed to bring your cell phones. That was a prohibition in Brockton for many years. But when you come in, you'll have your temperature taken, and you'll have a court officer ask you a series of questions about whether or not you've had a fever or any exposure to COVID, anybody in your family who has been COVID positive, if you've traveled out of state, and what your condition is with that as well. So it's a different experience. You have to wear a mask. You have to have a mask on when you come into the courthouse. There's no way to get around that. We need people to be masked so that you will be safe when you come in, and then all of our staff will be safe as well. So there's more room to walk around in the courthouse than there used to be. But again, if you have to come in, we will take care of you and make sure you get the access that you need to the courts.
All right. So what are some things you're doing moving forward as we get to this new normal? What are some measures that you're going to be doing, and maybe some new things that you've learned?
One of the things that I've learned is that in the first 5 years, we would come up with a really good plan. And as you know, when I was in Marshfield, I love to ask questions. I love to go to the experts. I like their opinion and listen and come up with a plan. And usually you execute that plan and you carry it out. The one thing I've learned in the last 8 months is that plan usually gets changed or thrown out within a matter of a week or two, and we have to be able to adjust. So setting expectations with our staff and keeping them motivated, making sure that they know that they're safe in the workplace and that I'm there advocating for them, making sure that the administrative offices know what supplies we need, what protocols we need, and the steps I take to protect the public when they come to see us are really the most important things for me on a daily basis. And sometimes that involves changing a plan that I made the week before.
Right.
So, and as I spoke about us getting back up to that 100% staffing level, we received a communication just before Thanksgiving that we were going to go to a reduced staffing model again, out of concern for the uptick in COVID cases and the fact that a lot of folks may have gathered with other family members for Thanksgiving and what that might mean for COVID numbers in the weeks to follow Thanksgiving. I just received confirmation that staffing model is going to continue at least until the second week of January. So if folks are calling us and they do get a few rings before somebody picks up, or they need to call back later, know that we're still open. It truly is just a factor of us only having maybe 5 to 7 staff members in the office when we normally have 20. And we're trying to get through those phone calls as quick as we can. But please don't give up. If you need us for anything, we will take care of you. And I always tell people, if you can't get through on our main line, you can't get through on our email, you can call my direct line at my desk too. That's what motivates me to make sure everybody else is answering the phone.
Right.
And that's I'm at the 8510 extension at 508-747-8510. So if you can't get through to the other numbers or the other emails, call me directly.
So contrary to what some people believe, the courts never really closed during this whole time.
No, we were closed for that 3-day period of time in March. And then although it's more complicated to have 2 different courts and manage them, it was actually a useful tool for me at certain times during the crisis, because we had a 2-week period where the Plymouth Courthouse was closed completely because of a COVID case. And we were still learning about how COVID is transmitted and what it would end up doing. So this was early on. When that occurred, we shifted all of our work up to the Brockton office, where that team had been sequestered, so they weren't impacted by the Plymouth employees. And we've had a couple of times where the Brockton office had to be closed for a few days. And we did the similar thing where we brought our cases down to Plymouth and made sure they were heard. Our focus at the beginning of the process was very limited on our emergency cases. We're now back fully running, handling all case matters in the probate and family court. and knock on wood, we have both courthouses open, judges in both buildings, and working remotely assigned to both buildings, making sure that we can do our business.
You kind of answered this a little bit prior, but what should people know to ensure the best possible experience that they have to use the probate court?
The best possible thing you can do is to go on to either mass.gov or go on to PlymouthCountyProbate.com. Those are my website that I created, is the Plymouth County Probate website. Mass.gov contains information that the trial courts in the state have put together, and do some research on your own. A lot of folks can't afford an attorney to handle matters for them in the probate and family court. That happens quite frequently. Before COVID, I would say that close to 80% of our litigants were pro se, self-represented litigants. So educating yourself as much as possible before you come to the court is really important. And if you get to a point where you have done that and you have your list of questions, then give us a call or reach out and email us, and we'll be able to assist you. The more preparation you put into your case before you come to court, the smoother your case will go as you enter into the phase of whether it's giving notice to an opposing party or trying to figure out what your obligations are for a pretrial conference, pretrial hearing. The more effort you put into it, the more preparation you put into it, the safer you will be as you go through the system. And as always, I encourage people, if you need us in person, we will be there, but please call us first or email us and let us see what we can do for you virtually to get you access to the courts.
And if people want to find more about your office or the courts, where can they go?
You can call our phone numbers if it's a direct question about, like, how do I file something and you couldn't find it online. Our Plymouth office is at 508-747-6204. And our Brockton office is at 508-897-5400. And as I said before, my direct line is 508-747-8510. People do call. I know you're laughing. People do call. And we also have, no, I'm busy. Sorry, somebody's trying to grab me from out in the office. And we also have our PlymouthCounty.com probate website that I've put together myself with information that was from the prior administration as well. And you can always go to mass.gov and just type in anything into the search bar related to the probate and family court. That website is improved exponentially over the last 6 years that I've been in office.
I laugh at with any politician, elected official, candidate who gives out their director cell phone number. Credit to them. So, Matt, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us today to talk about your office and all the things that you guys have going on.
Jonathan, thank you so much. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season. Please remain safe. Use your mask when you're out in public, and I look forward to speaking with you again.